So why aren't you afraid of sharing your diagnoses like borderline personality disorder, ADHD, and autism so openly? And then I'll ask more specific questions down the road.
I'm not afraid to share them because if I was afraid to share them, then that would be me being afraid to be myself. And I grew up with a mother who was very afraid to be herself. And I think that created both a genetic and an environmental inability to do anything but be me to survive.
Especially with borderline, right? Because borderline is because I'm a forensic clinician. So I deal with dual diagnosis in my current clinical work. And as you know, borderline, along with bipolar, is one of the most stigmatized diagnoses. Shout out to Hollywood for doing improper jobs, of course, right? Misportrayal. So let's zoom in one by one. But I love when you said, by denying any part of yourself, you're denying the whole wholesomeness, the essence of who you are.
Right.
Right. That's why I don't use the word overcome on my podcast or in real life. I do not like that word because environmental, as you said, epigenetics.
Yeah.
Right. How do you overcome a part of yourself? I used to be depressed. I'm anxious. Whether you like it or not, they have become part of who you are epigenetically.
Yeah.
On the truest molecular level. So I ask my clients, how do you overcome a part of yourself? Teach me. I don't know. How does it even make sense semantically, right?
Yeah.
And I sense that from what you said. With that being said, though, borderline, why do you think it's so stigmatized? And can you share some fundamental core characteristics to combat this misinformation by the mainstream media?
I think borderline is misunderstood because it's scary, fundamentally. I think it's scary for the people who see the symptoms and behaviors on the outside. And I think it's so scary for people who experience the symptoms and behaviors on the inside that there's an inability to explain the symptoms and behaviors in any way that allows people to see them neutrally or with reasoning. Even if the behavior is unreasonable, to see the reason, because there is a reason, just potentially not an appropriate one. It's fear-based, it's scary, and it's harmful, it's hurtful for people outwardly and for the people experiencing it. Scary things people avoid. Scary things people judge. Consciously, sometimes, and always unconsciously. That's our survival ways. And so it's easy. It's easy to judge someone with borderline personality disorder. And I'll get into some of the symptoms shortly, because a lot of the symptoms are normal human behaviors that even on a minimal level make people feel ashamed. And some of those symptoms include out of proportion anger, outbursts. It includes the push and pull and valuation and devaluation in relationships. It involves panic attacks and feeling completely disconnected and potentially dissociated, meaning detached from reality, which is kind of scary. If someone said to you, the person sitting next to you is detached from reality and super angry and doesn't know how to have interpersonal relationships, you might take a couple inches of more space. And that's really what the experience is like on a high level for the population of borderline and then the general public.
I think one of the first symptoms that jumps out to me from my work, of course, it's a spectrum, first of all. I want to make that very clear. Borderline, a lot of personalities, it's a spectrum. Just like sexuality is a spectrum, right? Human nature is a spectrum.
Right.
Spectrum literally means a wide array of range. I don't know why people hate or are allergic to the term spectrum. It's literally what that means. Is unhealthy attention seeking. And I can't help but connect the unhealthy attention seeking aspect due to attachment histories a lot of borderline individuals struggle with today's instant gratification, attention now. I can't help to wonder what is the detriment that's insidious and implicit that borderline individuals struggle with when they go to these social media platforms for, oh yeah, this is where I get my basket of attention. But these are not meaningful attention, but superficial attention. Any thoughts?
Yeah, many. I think, my personal presentation of borderline is unique because of the underlying condition. It's interesting. Before getting into the underlying condition, another aspect of borderline is a lack of identity, stable identity and sense of self. And what's so interesting is that from the outside perspective, someone with borderline getting a lot of attention, from the viewpoint of someone that doesn't have borderline, the assumption would be the borderline person is getting a lot of benefit from this attention. And the thing is, attention needs somewhere to be placed. Like the attention is outward, but who is placing the attention? Who's providing the attention and who's receiving the attention? And for many people that have borderline, the lack of sense of self is so extreme that what the attention actually does is provide a reduction of overwhelm and fear of abandonment externally, but it doesn't actually boost the ego or support a reduction of self-hatred, for example, in the actual person. So from the outside, it's very much they want attention and that's what fills them up. And from the inside, it's just what provides my shield to still exist. And I don't hold on to the attention because I don't have a place to put it. And that's not the case for everyone that has borderline, but at least for me, the lack of sense of self is so deeply attached to my other condition that for me, being such a public figure, the attention is scary. The attention is something I'm not used to. And I spent the majority of my life fully isolating. And so once I became a creator with so much attention with this disorder, it contributed to part of why I had to backtrack for the last 2 years because it was too much attention, which most people who understand borderline just generally would not think that would be the case.